So we are. I am going to discuss about the topic that is given in your syllabus, that is ecosystem. So let's begin. Ecosystem is a structural and functional unit of nature where the living organisms are interacting among themselves and also with the surrounding environment. So generally, it can be defined as the living organisms which are interacting among each other and also with the abiotic factors, the non-living factors like air, water, soil, okay, pH, and they are maintaining them. Okay, so this term ecosystem was first introduced by A.G. Tansley in 1935, and the main objective of ecosystem is to maintain the balance of nature. In a full descriptive way, we can define ecosystem in this manner. Ecosystem is the ecological unit that will includes all the organisms like the communities in a given area, all the biotic communities and the abiotic communities which will interact among themselves and also with the physical environment, so that a flow of energy will leads to clearly defined trophic structure, biotic diversity and material cycle within the system. So it has quite numerous terms which are uncommon to us. So it is saying that an ecosystem is the ecological unit, right? Ecology refers to a branch of biology. It refers to the branch of biology that deals with the relations of organisms with one another and to their physical surroundings. That is called as ecology. Okay, so ecosystem is a ecological unit. So it is just a unit of ecology where the all the relations of the organisms with the other communities try to interact with themselves in the form of food habit, in the form of predation, in the form of parasitism and so on, and that will include all the other organisms like the community in a given area. What does community means? I have written here. An ecological community means various organisms in that area. It is just a clump, or you can say aggregate, of organisms in groups that eat one another. That is just like a prey and predation relationship, and that are eaten by one another, and it is a trophic structure that made up of trophic compartments like your food chain and your food web. So just like it is saying that, I will try to define them in a broad way. So ecosystem is a ecological unit where all the organisms are interacting among one another and also with the physical environment, and it includes all the organisms, the communities in a given area which interact among themselves with the physical environment, right? Now here I have said a word called trophic structure. I have said in ecological community that it consists of various organisms in an area, and it is the aggregate of organisms that lives in groups that eat one another and can be eaten by one another, and it is a type of trophic structure made up of trophic compartments, which are the food web and food chain. What does trophic structure means? Trophic structure describes the system or organization of organisms into different trophic levels based on the amount of energy that organism consumes. So trophic structure, it describes about the system or organization of organisms into different trophic levels, right? There are different trophic levels. Okay. uh, the like the producers, the primary consumers, the secondary consumers, the tertiary consumers. So there are different types of trophic levels which define your trophic structure, and it is based mainly on the what amount of energy that particular organism consumes, right? Now, organisms can be categorized into different trophic levels within the trophic structure. So, there are various trophic levels within the trophic structure. What is trophic level? Trophic level is the position in an ecosystem that an organism occupies in relation with the primary source of energy and the food chain. So trophic level is that position in an ecosystem of an organism that an organism occupies in that position in relation to the primary source of energy and food chain. So there are various trophic levels. If you see, okay, in the next page, like for instance, you can see here the first trophic level. Generally in an ecosystem, the first trophic level is always composed of primary producers. The first trophic level is always composed of primary producers which convert either solar or chemical energy into their respective biomass. Biomass is the amount of matter present within the organism, the dry wet matter. Okay. So the first trophic level of that trophic structure is your primary producers which convert the solar energy or chemical energy into biomass. Now, which organism can convert this solar energy or chemical energy into biomass? We know they are the terrestrial and aquatic plants, trees, as well as some algae, and some chemoautotrophs are also there, like your cyanobacteria and thiotrix. They are the primary producers. Generally, these terrestrial plants are main primary producers. They are contributing much part in the form of primary producers like lichens, mosses, trees, grass, ferns, mosses, and so on and so forth. Some aquatic plants are also there like kelp, water lilies, etc., water hyacinth. Okay, so they are the primary producers. They are using the solar energy. They are using the solar energy from the sun. A small percentage of solar energy it take from the sun, and then they are using that energy to convert the inorganic substance present in the soil and air to convert into their respective chemical energy, and they prepare the food. Now, what are chemoautotrophs? These are some microorganisms, typically bacteria or protozoa, that obtain the energy through chemosynthesis rather than photosynthesis. So, some bacteria they are like blue green algae, then certain other bacteria like thiotrix, they um, they are some protozoa are also there. They get their energy by chemosynthesis process, right? A chemosynthesis is a process by which organisms use chemical energy to produce your carbohydrates. They are not using the solar energy. Okay, so how they do that? These chemoautotrophs, they are capable of utilizing the inorganic compounds like your hydrogen sulfide, sulfur, ammonium, and ferrous iron. They are using them in the form of reducing agents, addition of electron or proton to make them reduced, and then they synthesize the organic compounds from the carbon dioxide. So this is a simple process by which the chemoautotrophs like cyanobacteria, like thiothrix, they some other protozoas, they get the energy from chemosynthesis reaction rather than photosynthesis, but they are contributing a very little part in the form of the first trophic level. Okay, as you can see that chemoautotrophs are found in hostile habitats, right? They are found in hostile habitats which are extreme conditions, not favorable for the that particular organisms to grow, such as deep sea vents, where light cannot easily penetrate through. So they have adjusted, they have modified their system, they have acclimatized, better to say, their structure to make food uh, from that chemosynthesis. Now what about the secondary trophic level? I know you can able to imagine the second trophic level will be the consumers. Okay, not all consumers, the primary consumers which are feeding upon the first trophic level, that is your herbivores. Okay, these organisms consume the primary producers, these organisms consume the primary producers and will get their energy from those organisms. Okay, so what will be that a tertiary or the third trophic level? The third trophic level will be must be the secondary consumers, which are the carnivores or omnivores. So the third trophic level will be carnivores that will consume the herbivores, the primary consumers. Okay, and what will be the fourth trophic level? The fourth trophic level will be composed of higher carnivores that will consume the other carnivores. Okay, so this is about the trophic structure. Now essentially if I say importantly if I say about this trophic structure that has been mentioned in these notes, mentioned in the definition of ecosystem, that it has been said that an ecosystem is an ecological unit that includes all the organisms like the communities of a given area which interact among themselves and with the physical environment, so that the flow of energy leads to clearly defined trophic structure. Okay, so this trophic structure that is composed of the first trophic level, second trophic level, third and fourth trophic level, it shows the feeding relationship also, okay, between different organisms. The trophic levels that shows the, which constitute the trophic structure, it shows the feeding relationship between the different organisms, both producers and consumers, has been shown how they are interacting with one another in a given area and a particular time also, right? Later on you will see about this pyramid of energy, pyramid of biomass, pyramid of number, which clearly shows the relationship between the trophic levels that constitute the trophic structure of ecosystem, in the form of ecological pyramid, also in the form of food web and food chain. Although you have learned food chain in your junior classes, which are used to describe the trophic structure, although there are important difference between these three things. Now one more thing, it has been said about the flow of energy. It has said, if you recapitulate that term, that definition of ecosystem, I have said that ecosystem is an ecological unit which includes all the organisms, like the communities in a given area, which interact among themselves with the physical environment, so that a flow of energy leads to clearly defined trophic structure. What does flow of energy means, that I have tried to discuss with you here. Although we have to separately understand this concept of flow of energy, I have tried to maximize you to better understand. Flow of energy or energy flow is the amount of energy that moves in a food chain. So when an organism is eaten up by another organism, why the organism is eating, why that higher organism is eating the lower organism, to obtain food, so that from food we get energy, okay, for growth and development in our body. And also the organism that has eaten up, they will be eaten up further by some higher organism from by some other trophic levels, higher trophic levels, for the same purpose, to get energy. So there is a constant flow of energy in the food chain, right? So energy flow is the term where your it defined as the what amount of energy moves through the food chain. The energy input or the energy that enters into the ecosystem will be measured in the form of joules or calories. It is a unit which is used to measure the energy. Sometimes kilocalories are also being used. Okay, now the largest source of energy, if I say the largest source of energy in an ecosystem, it is the sun, that we all know. The energy that is not used in the ecosystem is eventually lost as heat. It should be remembered that that energy which will be not used in the ecosystem, which will be lost as heat, and this energy and nutrients are passed around through the food chain when one organism eats another organism, right? So both the energy and the nutrients, they are passed along through the food chain when one organism is getting eaten up by another organism. Even in dead organism also, when an organism die, their biomass contain some amount of energy which are utilized by the decomposers. They are another category of organisms of community. They feed on dead organic matter or dead or fecal matter of the living or of once living organism, and they are using that organic matter to obtain energy from them, and the rest of the matter is recycled into the environment in the soil. Okay, now an example of energy flow in an ecosystem will be the autotrophs. Autotrophs are those organisms that can make their own food. It takes energy from the sun, small percentage of energy from the sun. Herbivores then feed on autotrophs, right, and change the energy from plant into energy that they can use. So the primary consumers then feed on autotrophs, and they change the energy from the plant into energy that they can use. They build up muscles in their body, they build up components in their body, and they just store the food. Okay, then comes the carnivores. The carnivores are the secondary consumers which feed on the herbivores, and finally the other carnivores prey on other carnivores. So in this way the system of cycling of the nutrients and the food, the energy goes on. Further, when that carnivores die, at one time they will die eventually. Not only the carnivores, all the herbivores, all the um, autotrophs which are not getting eaten up, they will eventually they will die one day, and their biomass, remaining biomass containing energy, will be utilized by the decomposers, where they will obtain small amount of energy from them, and they will recycle the other uh, biomass in the form of inorganic matter into the environment, so that the autotrophs can use that matter again. Now, if you see carefully, I will also discuss with you now that in each case during energy flow, when an organism is getting eaten up by another organism, or in good words you can say that when energy is passed from one trophic level to the next trophic level, um, each time some amount of energy has to be lost as heat into the environment. This is a true fact, that when an organism is getting eaten up by the higher organism, the energy stored within the biomass of that lower organism will not be used fully by that higher organism, because some amount of energy will be released or lost as heat into the environment. Why this is happening? This is due to the fact that each organism must use some energy that they receive from other organisms in order to survive. Suppose the herbivore have eaten some certain plant which is producing some energy in their biomass. That energy obtained by the herbivores, and when that herbivores is consuming that particular plant, the autotrophs, what happen? When that herbivore is consuming, what will happen? They have to oxidize that organic matter. They have to oxidize that organic matter so that they can break it down into simple substance, so that they can use to make their own functional parts. Like for example, we can they can make their tissues in their body, they can make different enzymes in their body, some hormones in their body like insulin, like growth hormone, etc., etc. So for that reason they have to break that organic matter, that biomass present previously in that autotrophs. Okay, now they will build up. So during oxidation some amount of energy is getting released in that process. Second fact, after utilizing that organic matter, that biomass from that previously trophic level, like for instance the autotrophs are eaten by herbivores, the primary consumers. These herbivores now they will use that energy, they will do respiration and other body activities, other cellular activities which are needed them to survive. So eventually there will be loss of energy, and a little amount of bio energy is stored within the body of that organism, right? Now when that herbivore will be eaten further by a carnivorous animal, the secondary consumer, they are getting a less amount of energy indirectly from the producers, right? In the same way, the carnivores are oxidizing the biomass from the herbivores after consuming, to break down the food into simple substance, so that they can utilize that energy to make their own tissues and enzymes and so on so forth, important parts for their cellular metabolism, okay, in their body. And in this way, that we can say that when energy is passed from one trophic level to the next trophic level, each time some amount of energy will be lost as heat into the environment. Okay, because 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 what happens actually, after getting that energy from the previous trophic level, each organism must use some energy that they receive from the other organism in order to survive, like respiration, other activities, reproduction. Okay, then protein formation. So some amount of energy is getting, most a part of the energy is getting used up, and you will see that the top consumer, the final consumer, after that there is no consumer level, the top consumer of a food chain will be the organism that receives the least amount of energy, and that's the reason they have to consume a large amount of animals of lower trophic level in order to get sufficient energy. That's why tigers, they prey on higher animals to get enough energy for them to get the food as well as the energy. Okay, so there is a rule called 10% law. There is a rule called 10% law, which I will try to discuss with you. Actually, I have already discussed during the energy flow. The 10% law is more clear term that has to be said. This 10% law was actually defined by Linderman. If you can see, it was proposed by Linderman in early 1990s, and according to this 10% law, it is saying that 90% of the energy captured from the previous trophic level will be lost as heat to the environment and other body activities. So when it is saying that the energy which was stored in the form of biomass by the previous trophic levels, when the organism is utilizing them, consuming them, about 90% of the energy captured from the previous trophic level is lost as heat to the environment due to the other body activities, and only 10% is made available to the next trophic level, right? So this is the rule. And an example, if I say, it has not been given here, an example if I say about this energy flow, okay, is for example, sorry for that, okay, for example, for this 10% law, if I say, suppose in a grazing ecosystem or non general structure of ecosystem, if I say, suppose the producers, right, producers are the plants, for example grasses here, they are utilizing the some percentage of solar energy. Suppose the amount of solar energy that is entering to our earth is let us assume 1 million kilocalorie, and out of that 1 million kilocalorie, few amount of energy, about 2 to 10% of that 1 million kilocalorie is utilized by the producers to make their own energy, to make their own food, and energy stored within them in the form of starch. Okay, about 10,000 kilocalorie is maintained by the producers, and then due to other body activities they are utilizing that energy. Suppose that particular grasses are eaten up by some herbivores, the primary consumers, say for example rabbit, they are not getting that full 10,000 kilocalorie of energy from the grasses, they are obtaining only 1000 kilocalorie from it, because most of the energy is utilized by the plants for their own growth, development, etc., etc., right? Then this rabbit, suppose getting eaten up by some secondary consumers, like for instance snake. The snake, while consuming these primary consumers like rabbit, it is not getting that full 1000 kilocalorie, it is just getting only 100 kilocalories of energy from that rabbit, because the rabbit utilize that 1000 kilocalories for their other body functions like respiration, like your reproduction, like your other body activities, preparation of the different type of proteins, okay, then mechanical functions like walking, jumping, also use energy, right? Now when that snake is receiving, it is receiving just 100 kilocalories. So if you see, a 10% law is maintained, only 10% is forwarding to the next trophic level while consuming the other organisms of the lower trophic levels. Now when the snake is eaten up by some tertiary consumer, for example an eagle, it is not getting to receive that 100 kilocalorie, it will be just receiving only 10 kilocalories of energy. So this is the way that 10% law works, and it was first proposed by Linderman, right, to show that relationship between these things. The next thing that has been defined here, the next thing that has been defined in that ecosystem is your biodiversity, right, is your biodiversity. uh, I have mentioned in that part during the definition of ecosystem. What is biodiversity? Biodiversity, in simple terms, it is the variety of life forms on earth, okay, or the variety of life forms present on a particular ecosystem is called your biodiversity. And this biodiversity can, it generally does not means about what the varieties related with the numbers. You can also define biodiversity in the form of genetic level, also in the form of species level that we normally see, and ecosystem level. In the genetic level, how you can define biodiversity is, we all know we are made up of the building material in our whole system is your DNA, and DNA is a structural and functional unit which maintains the cell, which contains all the information, you can say, for our all activities, you can say, for the creation of living organism. And this DNA contains certain essential parts which will forms that particular protein that are called as genes, right? Now what happened in case of genetic diversity? If you see, for example, with the help of example I will try to understand with this matter. For example, there are rose plants, right? There are rose plant, okay, but there are variety of rose plant in that same species. Why it is possible? It is because due to variation among their genes, okay. In the same way, like for instance, we are human beings, but if you go through the world and if you look around the world, you will see there are American people, there are Burmese people, there are Chinese people, Japanese people, all are human beings, but we are different from one another in our physical appearance, okay, and little bit behavior also. More, it is also available on behavior, and this occurs due to variation among the genes between us. That is your genetic diversity, they want to say. Same species, but they are varying one individual with the other individual due to the due to variation in their genes. And it is due to this fact we go DNA fingerprinting also which is another science related with criminal investigations, paternity testing, okay. So this is about the genetic level, that at genetic level we can define biodiversity. Then species level, you know, different species are there. Like for example, if you see the genus of Panthera, okay, there is Panthera leo and Panthera tigris. Both are from the same genus, but Panthera leo have a different structural appearance, and Panthera leo is actually your lion, and Panthera tigris is your tiger. So they are quite different from each other, but their genus is same. Okay, that is your species diversity that shows. And ecosystem level diversity refers to the different types of ecosystem where different type of organisms are surviving, and also the plants also. Like for instance, a pond ecosystem will contain certain specific organisms thriving in that area, living in that area, compared to a mountain ecosystem, compared to a lake ecosystem, right? Or forest ecosystem. So depending on different ecosystems, different type of organisms interact among themselves, adjust themselves to the surroundings. So all these things define your ecosystem, right? There is also one another term called primary productivity. Primary productivity is actually the synthesis of organic compounds from the atmosphere or aqueous carbon dioxide. So, synthesis of organic compounds from the atmosphere or aqueous carbon dioxide leads to the formation of primary productivity. In simple words, I will not go for difficult terms. Primary productivity simply means what amount of matter is prepared, by the producers from the photosynthetic energy, from the energy that it gets from the sun. That is your primary productivity. There is also another term called secondary productivity, where they consume the biomass from the primary producers, that is your primary productivity, and they make their own using that energy they are making their own tissues and biomass in their body. That is called secondary productivity. So, primary productivity is fully related with the producers, where they are synthesizing the organic compounds from the atmosphere or aqueous carbon dioxide, and it principally occurs through the process of photosynthesis. That clearly defines that primary productivity is maintained by the producers, which uses the light as a source of energy, but it also occurs through chemosynthesis that I have discussed with you previously, with the help of certain microbes like blue green algae and certain sulfur containing bacteria also. And almost you can say that all the life forms on earth depend on this primary productivity, either directly or indirectly. Even the higher carnivorous animals which are feed on flesh, they are also indirectly related with this primary productivity. Otherwise, how will be the primary consumers will form? They will not get that food to eat from the primary productivity if it is not occurring. Okay. Now, the organisms which are involved for this primary productivity or production is called as primary producers, right? The last thing that I will try to say with you, and also the types of ecosystem little bit I will discuss. The last thing I will try to share with you is your material cycle in ecosystem. This is a quite bigger topic. Material cycle is the supply of nutrients to an ecosystem that principally comes from the soil, but it also comes in the form of air, through rain, through snow, and as dust also. And nutrients are not found directly as elements; they are found they are found in compound forms, which are recycled throughout the process during in food chain. Nutrients like derived from those from nitrogen, carbon, phosphorus in the form of compounds are cycled in such a way that they are both incorporated into plants and animals, or else are made available for the plant uptake, or by decomposition of dead plants and animal remain. So, how do these nutrients are recycled in nature? The nutrients are recycled in nature through the process of food chain habits, through decomposition habits. Okay, they are recycled, and the pathway from the sources to sinks and back to the sources again are called as material cycles or elemental cycles. Now, the examples of material cycle that you have learnt little bit before in your class 10, okay, are your carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, sulfur cycle, phosphorus cycle is also there. Okay, they are the ways through which the elements or the nutrients can be recycled in the nature. We'll discuss them. They are also called as biogeochemical cycles also. Now all the cycles will not be discussed related to your topics. I will try to discuss with you. Next is the type of ecosystem. Type of ecosystem basically means that what are the types of ecosystem. There are various type of ecosystem, you know, like your terrestrial ecosystem or the land ecosystems. Within this terrestrial ecosystem there is different type of areas like grassland ecosystem, there is wetland ecosystems, there is tropical rainforest ecosystems, right? uh, Mountain ecosystem, plateau ecosystem. Okay, then aquatic or water ecosystem are the lake ecosystem, um, pond ecosystem, river ecosystem. Okay, so different type of ecosystems are there, but generally in these notes that I have managed from different sources of books, it has shows that ecosystem can be divided into three main types. One is your land, all the land ecosystems, aquatic ecosystems, the second type of ecosystem, and your man-made ecosystems. The land ecosystems are all the forests, grasslands, deserts, plateau regions, mountain regions, hilly regions. They form the land or terrestrial ecosystems. All the water ecosystems or aquatic ecosystems related with the pond, river, lakes, um, gulfs. Okay, they are related with the uh, aquatic ecosystems. And about the man-made ecosystems are the gardens, the cropland, zoos. They form the man-made ecosystems. Okay, but although these ecosystems has been divided into broad term, but they are all related with one another. Okay, that's why the food chain is a little bit of complicated. Okay, lastly I will try to say about the components of ecosystem. This you all know. Just you can, if you read thoroughly this if you read thoroughly this part, then you can able to understand very clearly that what are the components that make up the ecosystem mainly made up of two components. One are the abiotic factors. All the abiotic factors are the non-living parts found on earth, like your temperature, water, light, soil. The inorganic substance and organic substances are your abiotic factors of ecosystem, whereas the biotic factors are the producers, which are all the plants and chemoautotrophs, then consumers, all the herbivores, carnivores and omnivores, and the decomposers like bacteria, protozoa and fungi. Certain mites, ticks are also there. Okay, which forms the decomposers. Now little bit discussion I have given about these abiotic factors. This will not take too much, this will not require too much. Okay, just go through it. uh, Abiotic factors are the climatic conditions and physical factors of the given region, like your air, water, soil, temperature, light, including its duration and intensity also, pH, moisture, that is your relative humidity. So the climatic conditions are all your physical factors, right? The air, water, soil, temperature, that makes up the ecosystem actually. Otherwise it's not possible, right? Okay, for the growth, for the survivability of organisms. Even the light also plays an important role, because light plays an important role for the producers, also by the indirectly by the consumers also. Okay, it will maintain that cycle, that biological cycle. Okay, in the duration and intensity, how much duration the light is, and how what is the intensity or depth of that light. Okay, like for instance, if you go to Norway, the land of rising sun sometimes say, because 24 hours at certain seasons they have 24 hours sunlight, but although they have duration much longer sunlight, so we can imagine that there must be greater vegetation in that area, but no, it is not possible because the intensity of that sunlight is very very weak. So there is not possibility for the growth of higher organisms to survive in that area. Okay, so both intensity and light and duration plays an important role of the light in making the ecosystem more rich with species, with organisms. The inorganic substance, as you all know, the water, carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus, and so on, all of which are involved in cycling of materials in the ecosystem. Now you cannot get this elemental nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus, carbon. We will get in nature. These elements will be found in these elements will be found in the form of compound forms. Okay, just like when you will see the nitrogen cycle, you will see that the nitrogen is getting fixed up from the atmosphere. It is fixed up into the soil in the form of nitrates and then nitrites and then nitrogen dioxides. Okay, so in compound form you will always found these nutrients, these elements in the form of essential parts. The organic substance are the substance which are prepared by the living organisms by using that inorganic nutrients like your proteins, carbohydrates, lipids present in either biomass or in the environment. Now, how organic substance can be found in the environment? During the process of decaying or decomposition, these organic substance may remain, or sometimes you can see the fecal matter. Okay, the fecal matter that normally fecal matter are the waste matter. Okay, you know all the waste matter which are getting released by the animals, they also that also contain the organic matter which are also getting recycled into the environment. Okay, next comes the, okay, I have not said about the proteins. The proteins, if you see the structure of proteins, those who are not from science background, if you see the structure of proteins, just go through it, you will see that proteins is made up of amino acids. And what are amino acids made up of? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and the side chain which contain various functional groups. So you can see that all the inorganic components are building up by the living organisms to make organic substances, complex organic substances that can remain in the environment in the form of waste matter, in the form of dead biomass, the humus, you can say. Okay, next is your biotic factors. The biotic factors are all related with the living organisms. All the trophic levels we have to discuss here, so I am going quickly referring here, going through it. First biotic factor is your autotrophic component. The autotrophic component, as it says, it means self nourishing. That means it can make their own food by using the energy either from chemosynthesis or from photosynthesis. So they are component of ecosystem that includes the producers. All the producers are involving in autotrophic component, which convert the solar energy or solar energy into chemical energy that becomes locked in complex organic substance like carbohydrate, lipids, and proteins. So the plants or the producers, what they are doing, they are using the solar energy, and they are with the help of the solar energy, they are using them to convert that inorganic components found in the nature, use them to convert into respective carbohydrate, proteins, and lipids, and store that energy within their body with the help of simple inorganic substance. Now, autotrophs also fall into two categories. One is photoautotrophs and another one is chemoautotrophs. Let us discuss the photoautotrophs and chemoautotrophs. Those photoautotrophs are those organisms which use the green pigment called chlorophyll to convert that solar energy or light energy into respective chemical energy, okay, to make their food as well as to build up their body. Like trees, grasses, algae, and other phytoplanktons and photosynthetic bacteria and cyanobacteria are photoautotrophs. Where phytoplanktons, if you don't remember, phytoplanktons were the first primitive living organisms related with the plant kingdom that survive on this planet first. Then comes the chemoautotrophs. Chemoautotrophs use the use the energy generated from oxidation reduction process. If you are not familiar with this term, they mostly know by the science background students. Oxidation reduction is a process also called as redox reaction, where RE stands for reduction and OX stands for RED stands for reduction, OX stands for oxidation, where both oxidation reduction reaction occurs. Simply oxidation means addition of oxygen to that particular compound to break that compound, and reduction means removal of oxygen. So these they use this process, okay, they use this process so that energy can be generated from this process, which will be utilized by them to store that energy and to utilize that energy. And most of these chemoautotrophs are all the microbes, like you can see the sulfur bacteria, then Begia toa is another type of microorganism. Most of the protozoars can go through this chemoautotroph process. The next feature are the heterotrophic component or heterotrophic component. Heterotrophic component are what? Heterotrophic component are those who cannot make their own food. That means all the consumers make your heterotrophic part, and they are also fall into two categories: macro consumers and micro consumers. Let us see what are macro consumers. Macro consumers are also called as phagotrophs. They are also called as phagotrophs. And macro consumers are the higher organisms which 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 consume the other organisms or chunks of organic matter, like your herbivores and carnivores, right? Then there are also some category of organisms called omnivores. Just like us, we are depend on plant, we are depend on plants as well as we are depend on animals too, so we are omnivores. Bears are also omnivores, okay. Okay, so you just go through these notes, it is very easy, I have not repeat them. The micro consumers are actually the decomposers, right, or the reducers or scavengers. So the micro consumers are decomposers which are using the dead organic matter or the fecal waste matter from the previous trophic levels, all the other trophic levels, and use them for making their own energy, to utilize that energy and store them. And most of the nutrients are getting recycled back to the environment again, so that the autotrophs can again use that inorganic nutrients. So microconsumers include the microorganisms like bacteria, actinomycetes, and fungi that can able to break down these complex organic compounds of dead or living protoplasm, absorb some of the decomposition or breakdown products, and release the inorganic nutrients in the environment again, making them available for the producers. Okay, various type of invertebrate animals, those who don't have vertebrate column, like your protozoa, oligochaeta, then earthworms, ticks, annelids, they use this dead organic matter for their food, and they have essential enzymes to break down this organic matter. And most of the nutrients, when they are breaking that organic matter into inorganic forms, they are using some percentage of that matter for the purpose of building their body and energy, and at the same time the rest of the inorganic nutrients prepared is getting recycled into the environment in the soil, making them available for the producers again, and in this way nutrient cycle continues. Okay, Now there is a term called detritus. Detritus are that disintegrating dead organic matter that is found in this earth is called detritus, and by the action of these decomposers, the disintegrating detritus result in particulate organic matter, which is also called as POM, and dissolved organic matter, which plays an important role in maintenance of soil related environment. So actually when decomposers break down this organic matter they form particulate organic matter and dissolved organic matter, such organic matter which can be dissolved in water, and it may not be available to the environment because they percolate down through the earth, reach to the water layer, underground water layer, and mix with it. Okay, so this was all about your first class of your ecosystem. I have make a separate group in WhatsApp related with this ecosystem class. I have tried to make an audio notes based on this. Okay, due to some problem I could not able to do the video lecture classes, so I go through these YouTube lectures. Just subscribe the channel that I will share with this in this group. Okay, so that you can get update of these videos, and also in the message you will see every day. Okay, to get that notification.